Okay, good morning, everyone. We're at the bottom of the Gemara berachos on Yud Ches Amud Beis 18b, 3 lines from the bottom. We're continuing our discussion about whether the dead realize what's going on. This started a couple lessons ago. Rabbi Yonasan did not think that the dead would be offended by tzitzis dragging on their graves, to which Reb Chia said, no, they are. And then there was a whole discussion, do the dead know what's going on? So now finally, the Gemara is going to say a little bit of a development of Rabbi Yossi's thinking on the issue. And he kind of came around. Gemara says, Va'af Rabbi Yonasan Hadar Bey. And even Rabbi Yonasan, although initially had his one position, he retracted his earlier view on the matter, as we see from a statement said later on in the name of Rabbi Yonasan. To Amar Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amar Rabbi Yonasan, for Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani said in the name of Rabbi Yonasan, Minayin lamesim shemasaprim zem zeh. From where do we know that the dead converse with each other? Again, not with their lips, but on some higher form of communication. And then from that, we'll parenthetically see the point that's being brought out over here. Shenemar, it says in Sefer Dvarim towards the end, Vayomer Hashem Elov, and Hashem said to Moshe prior to his death, Zos haaretz asher nishbati la'Avram liYitzchak u'liYaakov lemor. This is the land which I swore to give to Avram, to Yitzchak, and to Yaakov, saying. Now, what does the word lemor, who is he being said to? My lemor. What's the meaning of the word lemor? This is not the classic Vaydaber Hashem or Moshe lemor. Hashem spoke to Moshe lemor, saying, telling him to say it over to others. So what does it mean over here? This is the land that I swore to Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, saying. So what's the lemor? Somer Kadosh Baruch Hu Moshe. It means that Hashem said to Moshe just before his death, Lech emor lahem la'Avram liYitzchak liYaakov. Go, when you're going to die and you're going to go up to Shemayim, go tell Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov the following. When you go back and you finish your lifelong mission, when you're not alive, go back and tell the patriarchs the following. So that's the point that you see the dead converse with each other. So tell them the following. Shvua shenishbati lachem, the oath that I swore to you, that Hashem swore to give the land of Israel, kvar kiyamti levneim. I've now fulfilled it to your children because they've begun to capture the land. They conquered the land of Sichon and Og, which were the protective wall, the firewall into Israel, and they captured that. So now they will be able to go into Israel and capture the land. So Hashem says to Moshe, go tell the patriarchs that you've done your job, you've brought the children of Israel to where they are meant to be, and so tell them that. So now, coming up to the top of Yud Tes Amud Aleph.
Rabbi.
Yes.
A question.
1 second. Let me pick up Go ahead, please.
So, because God told Moshe to tell our fathers this, does that mean that we're saying that the dead don't, quote, see what's going on in this world at all?
Oh, so this is the next line. This is the next line.
Okay.
Now we're on the top of Yud Tes Amud Aleph. This is what it's going to say now. And if you assume that the dead don't know anything that's going on in this world, as Rabbi Yonasan originally thought, it wouldn't make, and they don't, they're not attuned to what's going on besides their own bodies. Remember, he kept saying, well, they may know that, what do you call it, the pain that's to their body. They see their body decomposing, but anything else they're not aware of. So therefore, ki amar laho, my havi. So when Moshe will tell them about what's going on, what's the point of telling them, right? So that's the point he's saying. If they're not aware of what's going on, so why is he telling them that? So therefore, we see that Rabbi Yonasan must have retracted from his position. Now, look at the footnote over here, though. The Gemara's proof seems difficult. Maybe this is the question you're thinking of, Shelley. The Gemara has hitherto assumed that even according to the view held by one of Reb Chia's sons, that the dead are not aware of worldly events, it is still possible for a more recently departed person to inform them of recent events. Right? So they don't know, but somebody could tell them. How then does Rabbi Yonasan's exposition that Moshe was told to inform the patriarchs of the conquest of the land of Israel show that he retracted his original view that the dead are insensible of earthly affairs? Maybe they don't know what's going on as it's happening, and Moshe is just letting them know. That's how we deflected many of the proofs before. It's quite possible he retained his original view that on their own accord, the dead are oblivious of worldly affairs, but they're receptive to reports brought to them by others, right? So that's a good question, right? Every time we brought a proof, oh, you see the dead know what's going on. We said, no, maybe somebody died and then they told them about it. So even those who say that the dead aren't aware immediately of what's going on, but they could be told about what's going on. So Maharsha answers that Rabbi Yonasan's original position was even more extreme than that of Reb Chia's sons. So it seems there were originally three positions here, as we shall elaborate. Reb Chia's sons had based his view on the verse, his sons may attain honor, he will not know it, which implies only that the dead are not of themselves aware of events in the world. He concedes, however, that the dead can be informed of them by more recently deceased people, right? That was this kind of middle-sized position. In other words, Reb Chia held the dead are aware of everything that's going on as it's going on. That was Reb Chia. One of Reb Chia's sons, as they were going back and forth, saying, well, they're not aware it's happening right now. They can't get a view into the world, but they can be told by people who die and updated. But Rabbi Yonasan's original view was like this, but the dead know nothing at all, implying that they are completely oblivious to all world events. They're not even interested. No one's going to tell them anything. They're in a different sphere of reality. Accordingly, it would not be possible even for a recently departed person to inform such matters. Now, since Rabbi Yonasan later expounded that Moshe informed the patriarchs of such events, that proves that they do know something, and perforce Rabbi Yonasan retracted his original view. In other words, it comes out like this. It started off with three positions on the matter. Reb Chia's position was always that the dead are well aware of what's going on. They don't want to be told anything, and they're following along with what's going on in this world. Rabbi Yonasan said the dead don't follow what's going on. They're in a different zone. They're not even connected to this world anymore. And even dead people would tell them anything. It's just not in their Weltanschauung to hear such things. Then there was this middle position, as one of Reb Chia's sons kept deflecting the proofs and says, no, they may not be aware. Who says they're aware of what's happening as it materializes, but they can be informed and updated. From this, now, the Gemara is saying that Rabbi Yonasan has retracted from his most polar position and is now shifted over to the middle, to the position that's saying that they don't follow what's going on, but they can be informed of what's going on. So that becomes Rabbi Yonasan's retraction, not a complete retraction, but a partial retraction. So that I think should answer that. But now this brings another question based on this. Elamai diyari. So what then does Rabbi Yonasan now hold? That they do know of worldly affairs or not? If they know what's going on, so why would Moshe have to tell them? Right? So the Gemara is assuming that maybe it could go even further. The basis of Rabbi Yonasan's original view was the verse, but the dead know nothing at all. Since we have proven that Rabbi Yonasan retracted his previous view, the previous view said the dead know nothing at all. Well, that no matter what, we've taken that out. he must have reinterpreted the verse, right? Because he can't learn it. The dead know nothing at all. Apparently, he concurred with the interpretation given him by Chia, explained that the dead, even in the lifetime, they're dead, etc., etc. Without any scriptural basis for the obliviousness of the dead, once you've already said that you don't have a source anymore to say they're oblivious, you also must now hold that indeed they are cognizant of worldly affairs. So if they're cognizant, why then was it necessary for Moshe to inform the patriarchs? Now, the commentary still has a little question on that. The Torah does not entertain subscribing to, if you understand the view held by Rechia's son, that the dead are only oblivious on their own accord, but are receptive of reports brought to their attention by others. The basis for this view is the verse, his sons may attain honor, etc., as explained by Rechia's sons. But Rabbi Yonasan never used that verse as a source. So it seems once we got Rabbi Yonasan to go off from his extreme position, the Gemara assumes that he's going all the way to Rabbi Chia's position. So he doesn't hold the Rabbi Chia's sons. So now, if they really know what's going on, why does Moshe have to tell them anything? The answer is so that they can give a yasher koach to Moshe Rabbeinu, and they can acknowledge and appreciate what Moshe did. In other words, yeah, they could know what's going on, but Hashem says, just like the Gemara says, you do someone a favor, you should let them know. So the same thing, you should tell them, and they will have gratitude focused towards you. Yes, they know what's going on, but you're letting them know that they owe you some gratitude. Okay, so now the notes say the conclusion that seems to emerge from our Gemara is that the dead are indeed aware of events in this world. Okay, it should be noted, however, that Tosfos to Sota quote a Gemara as concluding the dead are not aware of worldly events. So that's a problem with Tosfos, and there's other commentaries who deal with that. Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshit suggests that both views have an element of truth. If the righteous during his own lifetime was devoted to improving the lot of his fellow Jews, then after his death, he continues to comport himself in his previous manner and therefore remains aware of the plight of his living brethren. However, he was primarily involved with his own spiritual growth. When he dies, his soul becomes disengaged from this world completely and is unaware of earthly events. So that is that idea. So it comes out from the following. So how much do the dead know about what's going on in the world? The basic answer is how much they were interested in the world in their lifetimes, which would suggest the following, that a big tzaddik, a real tzaddik, who cared about everything that happened to the entire Jewish people, and if he was told that a Jew in a far, let's say somebody like Lubavitcher Rebbe or Rav Moshe Feinstein, who cared about Jews in every nook and cranny around the world. So when they leave this world, since they were busy worrying about everybody in the world, so therefore Hashem, when they're no longer alive, he informs them of everything that they were interested in. He knows everything that's going on in the world. And that's the idea that the tzaddikim in Shemayim, they pray for us. So let's say right now, the great rabbis are they know about this COVID-19 in Shemayim, and they're davening to Hashem that, it should stop. On the other hand, let's say people who only cared about their community. They really didn't care about anything that went outside of their community. So they will be informed about things that are going on in their community. Or let's take it a step less. Let's say they only were interested in their family. So then they will be very involved in what's going on with their family. And then if they only cared about themselves and they really didn't care about anybody, well, then they just don't have to know anything about this world. So it's what you invested into this world, that's what you'll realize. So it would come out, so we assume that most parents love their children. I'm not talking about abusive parents and people who gave up their kids for adoption and they didn't want to take care of them, but I'm assuming most parents loved their children and cared about their children and sought their welfare. So now they are apprised of the developments that are happening in the family. That's why it's customary, for example, should a parent predecease the marriage of their children, there is a custom to say a kel molei rachamim at the wedding, because the dead are very interested in the wedding of their children and are present in some form or another. That's the idea. And similarly, when we say yisker for our parents are aware of the yisker that we're saying for them, and they're aware of the tzedakah we give in their name. So that becomes the primary conclusion of the Gemara, that the dead are aware of the world to the extent that they cared about different parts of the world. And that concludes this discussion on this topic. Now, we move on to other Agadita discussions. Any questions, comments? It's pretty clear what we're mentioned over here? Okay. Rabbi Yitzchak says, anyone who disparages a dead person, literally it means he speaks behind the dead, but it means the person's dead and another person who's alive says not nice things about them. So it's ki'ilu misaper acharei ha'even. It's as if he's disparaged a stone, meaning the dead person is not affected by it. It doesn't mean to say he doesn't know about it, but he's not affected by it. Okay? Now, let's just go a little further. More explains. Ikadamri, some say it means the lo yade. It's because he doesn't know about what happened. Vigadamri, others say the yade lo ichbatle. What others say, what they say, it doesn't matter to him. It's like a joke. It's like, when a dog barks at you, you don't take it seriously. So in the next world, these things are not important to such a person. So what? He said I was stupid. What do I care? So that seems to be a debate. What does it mean when you speak disparaging about the dead person? Is it that they don't even hear it at all? Or that they hear it, but it doesn't bother them? So Gemara asks, is this so? Rav Papa says, Chad ishtoi milsa basrei demar Shmuel. Someone once disparaged Mar Shmuel after his death. Who was a tzaddik? And someone disparaged after his death. And what happened? V'nafal kanya mitlala. And a large heavy pole fell from the roof of the guy who was disparaging him, ubaza la'arnka demoche, and split open the membrane encasing his brain. He got his head smashed in. So you see that the guy who disparaged Shmuel got killed. It would seem that Shmuel was affronted by what happened. It seemed that Shmuel says to God, do you hear what this guy said about me? Well, listen, God, you take care of him. So it seems they're either they really know about it or they're very offended. So what are you saying, either position? Moore says, no, that's not a proof. Shiny Tzur Rabbanan, someone who's a rabbinical scholar, is a different situation. Because it's not that the scholar necessarily is behind this, but the Kutchabrichu Tove Bikare Hashem demands retribution for the insult because he's one of God's favorite children. He's a scholar. And Hashem knows what's going on, and he punishes that person, even though the scholar may be aware of it and it doesn't bother him. But still and all, it bothers Hashem that there's a desecration. It's really a desecration of God's name. Because if you disparage a Torah scholar, it's like disparaging Hashem. So that's not a proof to that story. Okay.
Rabbi.
Yes.
Rabbi.
Oh, I see. I understand. I see you had your hand up. I wasn't sure what that meant. I thought maybe it meant goodbye. But no, now I see. Okay, go ahead, Tony.
Okay, so is it a clear case? Does it fall into the category of lashon hara when you disparage a dead person?
For sure.
Yeah. Okay.
The biggest proof to that is Parsha Shlach, when the spies went out, and the Gemara asks, why did we end the Parsha before Shlach with the saras that Miriam had? And then the next story is about the spies. And the answer is because the spies should have learned from Miriam not to speak lashon hara. Now, what lashon hara were they speaking about? They're speaking lashon hara about the land of Israel. The land of Israel has no feelings, but you don't speak lashon hara about the land of Israel. You don't speak lashon hara about people or things that are good. Just like, see, that's why, for example, person should not say, oh, I'd hate to live in Israel. It's a terrible place to live. You can't say that. Even if, let's say, there are parts of Eretz Yisrael that are not pleasant, and maybe there's certain aspects that make it difficult, you cannot speak disparaging about the land. So if you can't speak disparaging about the land, you can't speak disparaging about people who are no longer existing. It creates the same damage, as it were. Damaging. Remember, when you speak Lashon Hara about a person who's alive in this world, let's look at it this way. What if let's say a husband talks to his wife at the kitchen table, and they say Lashon Hara about somebody, but it never gets back to that person. That person never finds out you said Lashon Hara. Nothing really affects that person. You still transgress speaking Lashon Hara, because the speaking of Lashon Hara itself is wrong. So even if the person never finds out about it. So certainly if the person is Shemayim, and he could very well find out about it, so you cannot speak Lashon Hara, you will be transgressing. Okay, now another thing about people who talk about the dead in a disparaging way. Amar Rabbi Yonasan ben Levi, Rabbi Yonasan ben Levi said, now we're being specific. Whoever disparages the memory of Torah scholars, okay, so what's going to happen there? No fell by Gehenim. He ultimately will fall into Gehenim. Even if what he says is true, he'll be punished, because again, we'll see in a minute, we have to assume that the Torah scholar, even if it's true, has done tshuva. Morris says, you'll see, if you see a tzaddik does an avera, you should assume that before he's gone to sleep, he's done tshuva on that. So the fact is, now you've said terrible things on that. This is going to be with a scriptural proof. Shinemar, the pasuk says in Tehillim, v'hamatim akal kalosam. As for those who turn to perverseness, Yoliche Hashem es poalei ha'aven. Hashem will drive them with the workers of iniquity. What's the proof? Let's look at the pasuk before. The pasuk before says, be good, Hashem, to the good and to the upright in their hearts. That means be good to assuming Torah scholars. The verse then continues, as for those who turn to perverseness, those who prefer to slander the reputation of these good and upright people, Hashem will drive them with the workers of iniquity. He'll drive them to Gehenna along with the other people who do lots of averos. And then the pasuk finishes, Shalom al Yisrael, peace unto the Jews. What's that adding? Afilu v'shosha Shalom al Yisrael, even when there is peace unto the Jews, meaning even after the scholar rests in peace after his death, nevertheless, the pasuk finishes off, Yolichem Hashem es po'alei haven. Hashem will drive them, those who disparage the Torah scholars, with the workers of iniquity to go to Gehenna. Okay, and this now, and the next statement is the basis of the previous statement. Tana Devei Rabbi Yishmael was taught in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yishmael. If you see a Talmud Chacham who did an avera at night, al tahar achrav bayom, you should not harbor any ill thoughts about him the next morning already. Shema asa tshuva. Perhaps he's done tshuva. In other words, you should assume that he did tshuva alone at home. Interesting. Reb Tzadok brings a different version of this teaching as it's in the Zohar. If you see a Torah scholar committed transgression by day, harbor no ill thoughts of him on the next day, for perhaps he has repented at night. Okay, similar idea. Anyway, not a Gemara says, it says perhaps. Gemara says, Shema sal kadaita. Do you think that it's only perhaps? In other words, don't disparage him. Maybe he did tshuva. You think it's maybe? Elavadai asa tshuva. Rather, you should say he surely has done tshuva. That's what you should say. And therefore, so on top of the fact, you're supposed to judge someone favorably. And as Talmud Chacham, you're obliged to judge him favorably. So now we're saying a step further. Not only you should judge him favorably, but even if you're not, let's say by mistake, like judging fairly, oh, I guess he didn't know it wasn't allowed, you have to assume he's done tshuva, which fits in very nicely to what we're learning in the Mesil Sharm in the evenings about Zehirus, that, a person's supposed to take out time and reflect on his behavior. So certainly a Talmud Chacham who's a tzaddik is going to take out time and reflect on his behavior, and he'll find out that he did something wrong and do tshuva. However, the Gemara qualifies this statement. Vahani Mili, when did we say this? He's for sure has done tshuva by now. Bidvarim Shibakufa, things that are personal matters of a private nature, in other words, between him and Hashem. We can assume he squared things off between him and Hashem. Avol b'mamona, but regarding monetary transgressions, which you can't say he's done tshuva completely until he's made restitution to the person he had to pay back to, then it's adahadar l'marei. It's only until he makes restitution to the proper owner. Okay, now obviously the Gemara is not referring about outright theft. A Talmud Chacham does not do outright theft, right? Because a guy like that shouldn't be considered a Torah scholar. Even if he is a scholar, he ain't a scholar in our books if he's a straight out thief. But it refers to, certain financial issues that might be within the letter of the law, but don't go beyond the letter of the law. Remember, a Talmud Chacham there's two levels. There's the strict letter of the law and beyond the letter of the law. Most people only have to go according to strict letter of the law, and God does not expect more than that. From a Talmud Chacham, God demands that he go beyond the letter of the law, and for him, that is the letter of the law. Very important. For him, that is the letter of the law. And therefore, we're not talking about a Talmud scholar who didn't have error. This means he didn't go beyond the letter of the law. In other words, you have certain financial disputes, and the tzaddik figures, I don't owe him any money. According to the law, I don't owe any money. But the guy was thinking this. There's all kinds of stories the Gemara talks about. I forgot which rabbi. They were talking about one of the rabbis. He hired a bunch of porters to schlep wine for him. And what do? They were so sloppy, they broke all the barrels of wine, right? So he said, I'm not paying you guys for that. You just made me lose thousands of dollars, and on top of that, you owe me money because they were sort of negligent. So what did he do? He took some of their clothes for collateral. So then these guys, porters, took him to court. And they said, he took our clothes. The guy said, listen, the guy owes me thousands of dollars from their negligence. Let him pay back. So they went to the big rabbi, Reb Yehuda Nasi. Reb Nasi said, give them back their clothes. So he said, is that the law? So he said, for you, that's the law. For you, that's the law. Then the porter said, now they see things are going their way a little bit. They say, but he never paid us. Guys, what? Pay you for breaking my things? Oh, well, we have to have supper tonight. Turns to the big rabbi. The rabbi says, you got to pay them. Is that the law? Yeah, for you, that's the law. In other words, tzaddikim are obliged to go beyond the letter of the law. Because remember, they're the role models. And you have to know that's what a chassid is. One of the definitions of a chassid is he goes beyond the letter of the law to emulate a Kodesh Baruch Hu. We can't legislate that for all Jews. But if you're already a big Talmud Chacham and you're a chassid, then that becomes your letter of the law is to go beyond the letter of the law. So therefore, we're talking about these kinds of scenarios where if you see the tzaddik who isn't paying because the guy doesn't deserve to get paid, so now he hasn't gone beyond the letter of the law, you can assume he's done tshuva and goes beyond the letter of the law. And that's why, sometimes it's good, something bad to have the rabbi be a person in charge of the money because I have to go beyond the letter of the law. Of course, you want the shul to. I remember years ago, the shul had bought something from somebody, and I hired the guy to do a certain job, and I said, okay, how much is this going to cost? And I said the words, all in. And we know what all in means. All in means including GST. Right? That's what all means, right? So he said $3,000. So he sends me a bill for $3,090 or whatever. I forgot what it was. So I said it was $3,000. He says, what about the GST? I said, I said all in. Because I didn't understand it that way. He says that you're lucky you're dealing with a rabbi because I have to always give in on those things. So he got the extra money. But I'm not so stupid because the next time I did with him, I said, let's write it down exactly what I mean over here. And the next time we did it correctly. But so that's an example where, I would be held as a thief if I'd say I'm not giving you the $90. So if you would see that happened, you'd have to assume I did tshuva by that night and I have rectified that situation. Okay, we got up to the 2 dots. Good place to stop. Have a great day, everybody. Sei gesund.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, good night.
If we're on.
Yeah, we're on time. See you.
Okay, stop recording.